This is Monday Morning Meditations number 260 on the Rising Man podcast with Jeddy Azuma. Every man's mission in life should be to identify his unique purpose. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rising Man podcast here on a Monday morning with our Monday morning meditations coming at you. Without further ado, the topic of today's Monday morning meditation is purpose given versus purpose pursued. So I had a really interesting podcast interview that I did with my bro James Silvis a couple weeks ago. And I was guesting on his show, and we started migrating into this conversation of purpose. And we started talking about different cultures from generations past, hundreds, thousands of years ago. And we locked in on the Spartans for a moment when we were talking about purpose. Because I had a realization that I think is really important for us all to acknowledge. Think of being born into a society like the Spartans, where being born as a boy, life was not guaranteed. It's well documented that within Spartan culture, some of their children, their newborns, were discarded because they were too feeble or physically they were deemed unfit at a young age. And they didn't want to waste time, energy, or resources raising a weak or feeble child. And even then, as the boys got older, and they would go through this rigorous training at young ages that today would seem unreasonable and crazy, frankly, for children to go through. But that was their culture. That was their society. And from a young age, those boys are told that they will be warriors, that their purpose in life was to be protectors of the people, to honor the Spartan code, to live in a way that a Spartan would. Their whole life was built around this strong culture and tradition of the Spartan mindset, the Spartan heart, the Spartan spirit. And for those boys, it was a lot different of an experience than the boys that are growing up nowadays. They were born, they were raised with a singular purpose: to be a warrior, to be a protector, to make sure that the next generation of Spartans lives on, and that this Spartan way is passed from one generation to the next. Fast forward to 2023. I have a conversation with my son, and I have the privilege to ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do with your life? What would you like to be when you're an adult in the world? Now just look at the contrast between those two experiences. On one hand, there's a boy who's born, and everything he witnesses from the moment that he can first open his eyes is guiding him towards this outcome of being a Spartan warrior, of being a protector and defender of his people. On the other hand, my son, the boys who are being raised nowadays, they're looked at as an infinite possibility. My son can be whatever he wants to be when he grows up. The world is his oyster. The resources and possibilities are endless for what he wants to create. That's a very different existence that boys are growing up with. And while I think on one hand we've solved a lot of problems and given our children an entirely different experience than having to be raised as warriors to protect the village, we've also overlooked the problem we've created. Because now we're raising boys in a world and giving them moral guidance at best and a value base that they can build from. But we're expecting them to make these huge decisions about their life purpose, about their vision, about where they're headed and what they're creating at such a young age. The percentage of people who go through college and use their college degree as a means to make an income is something less than 20% these days. To expect a 17 or 18-year-old kid to make a decision about what they're going to study in school that will then become their occupation for the next 30 to 35 years of their life is ridiculous. It's insane to think that young people are capable of making those decisions about their life when they're living in a world where everything is possible. Now, it's not to say that we should go back to living like Spartans. I'm not suggesting that. I don't know if there's one that's more right or correct than the other. I just think that the society we're raising kids in nowadays, with this expectation that they ought to be able to pursue and find their own purpose without being equipped with certain tools, certain distinctions, certain ways of thinking more critically, then we're missing, and we're doing a huge disservice to our children. This is why I encourage my own kids to make decisions based on what they desire and how they want their life to look like from a young age. And if there's an obstacle in their way, I challenge my children to think, well, what's another way that you can create that thing that you want? This isn't possible. This isn't available to you. What's another way you could do that? Is there another possibility? You see, we're having to train our kids from an early age to think like an entrepreneur. When I was growing up, an entrepreneur, a self-employed person, was an outlier. Even my parents' generation, there was so much expectation of just going to school, getting trained, having a job, and then finding somebody who will pay you to do your job. And fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know, we're creating a world where that's less and less necessary. And I would say that we're going to see an even greater tilt in the scales of people who are self-employed, self-directed, self-guided. But we have to start raising our children, raising our youngers differently. And I'm not even just talking about my kids and children, actual children. I'm talking about teenagers. I'm talking about 20-year-olds. I'm talking about 30-year-olds who have failed to identify a purpose that drives them, that motivates them, who have failed to launch in the world because they go out into these entrepreneurial ventures, but they don't have the skill set necessary to figure it out and be critical problem solvers along the way. So my main message here is that there's a huge difference between having a purpose that's granted, that's given to you, born into this world, predestined to be a Spartan warrior, versus being born into this world with endless possibility. What a wonderful gift that we give our children. But you wouldn't give a child a toy that required batteries and then not give them any batteries for it. If we're going to give kids this opportunity to create any kind of life that they want for themselves, then we have to think more about how we're priming them and preparing them to live into that world and to embrace that responsibility. So how does this pertain to you? Well, if you're raising a child or you're responsible for mentoring or raising other young people in the world, then reconsider how you're preparing them to embark on this journey. And if you're one of those young people who's still trying to find your way, let this be a reminder and an acknowledgement of how challenging of a process this can be. But don't let it be an excuse. It's simply a reminder that, hey, if you want to make your world and your life exactly what you want it to be, then go for it, young man. You're capable of it. If I can do it, you can do it. There's nothing that's more special about me or anyone else who's figured out this journey than there is about you. But what it's going to require is a special type of determination, a unique and extraordinary desire to find creative solutions to problems that you didn't see coming. It requires a backbone, requires grit and resilience, a do whatever it takes type of attitude. Ask yourself if you've got that. And if you don't, be honest. Better to be honest about where you are in your journey, to know that you can go out and have those experiences and acquire those skills so that you can create that life that you want for yourself. Because yes, you can do it. I believe in you and I know that you can, but it's going to require a different effort than you might have thought. So let this episode land. Be more honest with yourself. Be more honest with the people around you and realistic about the world that we're all growing up in. What does it take to identify a purpose and then to pursue it passionately, deliberately, and without quitting? Tune in next week for another Monday morning meditation. And until then, rise up and claim your destiny.